The discrimination against women. An overview. Globally, gender inequality is embedded in almost everything we do. It's seen in sport, the workplace, marriage roles, and is integrated into everyday lives, varying in extremity. Women have been at the forefront of discrimination on the basis of sex and gender since the very beginning, threatening world unity. Humanity have come a long way in attempting to dissolute the patriarchy. Yet, many women around the world continue to experience discrimination in many forms. For example, laws prohibiting women from access to land, property, and housing, economic and social discrimination, gender based violence, the denial of sexual and reproductive health rights, and the gender pay gap. The issue is worldwide, each country, continent, city, and town experiencing different forms of discriminatory behaviour towards women based on sexist stereotypes determining a woman's worth among men. Within Australia, the workplace pay gap and gender based violence are notably the most prevalent issues, endangering every single woman's economic and physical safety. Sex discrimination is a violation of the fundamental human rights and has required international protection in battling the sheer prevalence of inequality. Worldwide issues and links. In Egypt, more than 80% of girls aged 15 to 19 have been subjected to female genital mutilation. This includes more than 125 million Egyptian girls. In Saudi Arabia, women are still not allowed to drive, and in South Africa, a woman has a greater chance of being raped than she does of learning how to read. The UDHR. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is the most pivotal document in defining and promoting the inalienable and equal rights of human beings. It has been adopted by all 193 member states of the UN on the 10th of December 1948. The Declaration is a common standard of achievement for all peoples and societies. It includes civil and political rights like the right to life, liberty, free speech, and privacy. It also includes economic, social, and cultural rights like the right to social security, health, and education. It is enforced by the Human Rights Council as an independent UN intergovernmental body made up of 47 United Nations member states elected by the General Assembly. The human rights breach of the UDHR in regards to the discrimination of women. Article 1 and 2 explain the rights and freedoms of equality and acting towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. This is breached just by the discrimination of women globally, examples are the pay gap and sexual violence. Article 16 outlines that men and women, without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion, have the right to marry and to find a family. They are entitled to equal rights as to marriage, during marriage, and its dissolution. This is breached through physical and sexual violence, arranged marriages. Article 23 and 24 outline equal pay and equal work, including reasonable limitation of working hours and equality throughout work. This is breached as Australian women are paid 17.5% less than men during the same work. CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. This is an international response, an organ of the UN. The CEDAW was adopted in 1979 by the General Assembly as a legally binding document. The agenda for equality is covered in depth through 14 articles covering 4 dimensions of women's rights, civil rights, legal rights, reproductive rights, and cultural factors on gender relations. 187 of the 193 countries have ratified the CEDAW, and 131 countries have added 274 gender-related reforms to laws and regulations over the past decade. This is seen in Australia's Sex Discrimination Act, which will be mentioned later down the line. This is a case study involving CEDAW and their response to RB versus Turkey in 2012. RB's employer accused her of having an affair with a male colleague and dismissed her from the position, but did not dismiss the male colleague and threatened to spread rumours to pressure her to sign a document, attesting that she had been paid all her benefits upon termination. The Turkish court dismissed this discriminatory behaviour and the appeals to come. The CEDAW committee concluded there had been a violation of 3 articles of CEDAW. The committee decided that adequate compensation should be paid, that the state should take measures to implement laws on gender equality in the work environment, and that the state should provide training to judges, lawyers, and law enforcement personnel on women's rights and gender-based stereotypes. In this case, the injustice and discriminatory behaviour endured by RB in Turkey was adjusted and revised to value equality and exclude gender bias, while also achieving justice for RB through compensation and systematic change. The effectiveness of CEDAW. CEDAW has been shown to have small but statistically significant and positive effects on human rights. According to the OHCHR, CEDAW has fostered effective change in terms of a law on gender equality in Mongolia, legislation criminalising all form of violence against women in Burkina Faso and femicide in Panama, as we can see there's an image there of the Panama City Women's March. However, CEDAW relies on self-monitoring by state signatories who submit detailed reports on measures taken to implement CEDAW. The Human Rights Committee that reviews these reports are powerless in dealing with uncooperative states, creating difficulty in enforcing and promoting compliance. Therefore, CEDAW is somewhat effective due to cooperating states' effective responsiveness and the lack of enforcement the CEDAW imposes. The International Women's Development Agency, this is an international NGO. It is focused on promoting women's rights and gender equality predominantly in the Asia Pacific, known for its lower socioeconomic status. They have worked with over 194 program partners across 36 countries and territories. They work with partners to understand and respond to the unique challenges facing women. They focus on data collection and analysis by visiting countries and addressing correlations to effectively equalise the entirety of that country. They then share, fundraise and donate money to the cause by partnering up with local charities. An example is in Cambodia when they partnered up with various organisations such as the Monash University to complete a 3-year study looking at the links between disability and violence for women in Cambodia. The research showed that disabled women experience much higher levels of emotional, physical and sexual violence by other family members. The effectiveness of the IWDA. The IWDA, as a non-for-profit and independent organisation, allows innovative approaches as well as flexibility to adapt to local communities' needs. This provides a personalised experience that addresses the necessary issues for the specific region, as seen previously in Cambodia. The IWDA also aids in developing other organisations' projects, strengthening and providing resources to create an everlasting impact in lower socioeconomic countries. However, IWDA has a strong reliance on donations and funding, which raises sustainability issues in the long term. This sole reliance creates uncertainty of the longevity of the body. Although, so far, the IWDA has created positive change on a global scale, concluding it as an effective means in combating the human rights violation, discrimination against women. Australia's response to human rights. In regards to human rights, Australia has effectively cooperated and withheld a global obligation with the international community to maintain and integrate the fundamental human rights within Australia. We have signed the 7 core treaties addressing human rights, including the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women that we previously talked about. Australia is an active participant also in the Universal Periodic Review process, which is conducted by the UN Human Rights Council. This provides an in-depth analysis of Australia's compliance with our international human rights obligation. Along with these treaties, Australia is a party to all of the 7 optional protocols. Australia's legal responses. The Sex Discrimination Act 1984, the Commonwealth. It was formed in response to Australia's signing of the CEDAW to meet international obligations by closing the gender gap through providing equality. This act makes it unlawful to discriminate against people because of their sex, male or female, intersex status, gender identity, sexual orientation, and sexual harassment is also made unlawful. The SDA has provided women legal protection in Australia against discrimination in the workforce, education, and the provisions of goods and services. The Act will also help reform social attitudes and assist in the dissolution of the patriarchy through law. It is a pivotal and emblematic piece of legislation in defining Australia's social development. The effectiveness of the SDA. The SDA has provided women an opportunity for justice. The Act encouraged more women to seek an education and employment, which raised families' incomes. Women began taking more senior positions in the workforce and were promoted to more visible roles. Single mothers had more opportunities as well. However, relying solely on private enforcement reflects a weak commitment to stopping discrimination. Sex discrimination needs to be recognised as a broad social and structural problem and tackled at a systematic level, which would have a ripple effect among society, reforming attitudes and preventing patriarchal, misogynistic values. The SDA has proven to be somewhat effective in the legal protection of women, although the civil proceeding nature of the Act only provides compensation and other conciliation methods that do not aid systematic change. Australian Human Rights Commission. This is an intergovernmental body. They are established by the Australian Human Rights Commission Act in 1986 in response to the 7 international treaties. The AHRC are granted with statutory powers, allowing them to investigate and conciliate discrimination and human rights complaints, advocate to government for human rights, undertake research into human rights, provide legal advice on human rights obligations to court in discrimination cases. They also produce guidelines for employers, provide training and resources supporting diversity and inclusion. They also monitor and scrutinise Australia's performance in meeting its international human rights commitments, providing independent reports to the UN as well as the other organ. The Australian Human Rights Commission, in response to discrimination against women, has launched various inquiries into different areas of society to identify and combat sex discrimination. This is seen in the 2020 National Inquiry into Sexual Harassment in Australian Workplaces and the 2018 University Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Project. And there are many more revolving around sports and netball, basketball, HRC. They have proved to be indispensable in protecting women against discrimination through conciliation methods of resolution, of either policy change, an apology, or compensation, and it has been widely effective. However, the Australian Human Rights Commission 2018 to 2019 complaint statistics state that conciliation was 70% effective, while the 30% of individuals were left unable to come to an agreement, raising issues of the equality of achieving justice. The AHRC's conciliation methods proved to be somewhat effective. The Australian media's role. The media in Australia gives human rights issues wide publicity and shares vital knowledge about human rights, exposing society to the vast range of international and domestic issues. The law is ever-changing due to its need to reflect society's evolving attitudes, meaning the media plays an imperative role in influencing and sharing perspectives. State sovereignty plays a role in this, as the government is protected in this sense, able to deny the public's attitude despite pressure through exposure. According to WLIA, 15 of Australia's most influential news sites, women are only accounted for around a third of direct sources quoted and around a quarter of indirect sources. This exemplifies the harsh representation of women within our media. An example of a recent media case is Brittany Higgins, a brave former Liberal staffer who has come through publicly sharing her story of rape on the couch of Australia's now Defence Minister, Linda Reynolds. She has helped shine light onto Australia's government's corruption, resulting in a government-led review into how ministers and staff are held to account over claims of harassment, as well as a review into the workplace culture at Parliament. Conclusion. Therefore, the discrimination against women on an international and domestic scale have aided in the outlaw, prevention and enforcement for women's rights, paving the way for an equal world. Both the international and domestic responses have proven to be somewhat effective due to issues of compliance, state sovereignty and funding factors, although even the smallest of awareness has the opportunity to save a life and prevent discriminatory behaviour. Thank you.